It doesn't matter what softwares you know today, because with time, every technical skill gets outdated. What truly stays with you are the core principles, your mindset, and the way you think about your subject. Welcome to the Foundations for UX Design, a 15 episode series that will take you through all the important lessons and realizations I've had so far as a self taught UX designer. My name is Ansh Mehra and I am a product designer and storyteller at Zuddle.com, which is a virtual events hosting platform. In this session, we will be learning some of the most common mistakes students make when they begin their career as a UX designer. I hope you've seen all videos from the series preceding this episode. With that being said, I hope you enjoy this session. So without wasting any further time, let's get started. Alright, welcome to lecture 7, and in this episode we're going to learn how do we declare our UI text style. So in episode 6, we went through the basics of UI type. We understood some basic concepts that would allow you to understand these declarations easily. But before moving forward, I am going to assume that you have seen my first 6 episodes. If you're coming here for the first time, I have already started this series a while back where we spoke about responsive design, some tips and tricks to grow faster. Then we had a session on optimizing your work from home workspace, your energy, and your income. And then we had a guide for beginning your UX projects, then declaring your UI color systems, then understanding the basics of type. And then we have come to declaration. So if you're coming here for the first time, don't worry, you can watch these videos after this episode, but I would strongly recommend you to do that simply because we've been growing slowly from zero. If you miss some aspects of it, you might feel confused. Then I hope that you've started watching the Office Hours playlist on Figma's YouTube channel. It is a very valuable playlist, and I recommend every single student of UX design to go through that video. There are a couple of videos, so you should definitely finish that and document your learnings in a Notion document. Then I hope that you've started reading Medium articles on design. If you haven't got a paid subscription, do get that. It is a wonderful investment. In fact, even I write a couple of Medium articles on Figma optimizations and experiences from my entire startup journey. So I will put the link in the description. And then if you haven't started any of this, you can always finish your syllabus after this video. Don't worry, you have a lot of time. And in the end, most importantly, I hope that you're taking care of your mind and your body, because none of this matters if your mind and your body are not with you. Now, in the last episode, we discussed that there are 3 main buckets of type that we will declare. We had UI text, we had labels, and we had paragraphs. So let's understand what do we declare in each of these buckets now that we understand these categories. So what exactly do we include when we declare a Figma text style? So you have your font, which is the typeface that you choose. You have your line height. You have your kerning, which is actually the space in between every single character of your font. Then you have your font weight. If you declare these properties, you can't change them. You'd have to detach your text style if you have to override any of these properties. But they do not include color. So you can have a text style and then you can use that text style to make a font in any color. So if you're making a system where you say that this specific heading has to have a specific color, then that is another additional layer of systemization that you'd have to do. But in this case, you're simply declaring these major typography properties. You can override the colors, but you can't override these properties. So I've taken a picture of the text styles panel from your Figma file, and you essentially have this menu that opens up if you open each style. So you can see that you have your font, you have your weight, you have your font size, you have your line height, you have your text spacing or kerning, and then I think this is the paragraph line height. I'm not sure actually, I'll have to check this. But I usually go around these things, like these are the main properties that I usually go through. And the interesting part is that you can also write descriptions for other people to join in, which I strongly recommend. So you can see that this specific text style is probably used for, body text or subtext or whatsoever. Now let's take a look at some data that Figma has already put in their UI, like it's hard coded. you would realize that no matter what your text style is, they always mention the font followed by the line height. So this is always there. So I see a lot of people adding their font size and their line height in their text style name as well. You don't have to do that, simply because Figma will definitely give you this information by default in their Figma's text style panel. So you don't have to declare it every time you make that. Now, what all text styles do you declare? If you have your body, if you have your text styles, what all do we declare? Well, there is no set in stone rules for any of these declarations, but I would recommend you to have at least 3 variations in each of the buckets. So 3 labels, 3 paragraphs, and 3 UI text. That is the minimum, but you should not go beyond 5, because if you have too many options, you would start getting a lot of doubts from other designers. There will be a lot of confusion as to what to use when. So a balanced system is between 3 to 5 styles in each and every bucket. So this is an example here, and these are my different body styles, like UI body texts. This is the layer name, and this is actually the font size. So I want you to note that I have not started from 11. You should never ever begin from 11. The minimum font that you should have in your system should be 12 pixels, simply because of accessibility. And from 12, you can have increments. So in this case, I've made an increment of 1. Some people also have an increment of 2. It depends on how detailed or how intricate your UI is. But once you go above 16, you should enter the bucket of titles, right? Because above 16, you might have 18 pixels. I would recommend not to have 17, 18, 19. I think after 16, you can have increments of +2. So after, 16, it essentially becomes like a title. It's not basically body text, because it simply becomes too huge. And this is the preview. And you'd realize that I've added a number as well. This number essentially means that 1 is the biggest size, and the smaller I go, the smaller I get in terms of size. So if I begin from 1, body 1 would mean the biggest font size that I've declared in my body bucket. If I have T1, if I have H1, that is the biggest size. So as I go from H1 to H6, the font size reduces. And that is a common convention that even developers use. Even in, HTML and CSS, you would have something like P1 or H1 and H2. And this H2 would essentially be smaller than H1. So it's just a common convention that people follow. It just avoids a lot of confusion. And once you have decided that these are the sizes that I will have for my system, what you have to do is you have to figure out what are your weights. So once you've declared your font sizes, I know that I'm going to go from 16 to 12 pixels. Now I need to understand what are the weights that I have to keep, because you can't insert medium, bold, and black, everything into this one specific font size on Figma. So what you have to do is you'd have to declare them separately, because you can't override weights. So once I've declared body 1 to body 5 for my regular, I simply have to declare the same for maybe bold. Now, how many weights should you have? I prefer you should have just 3 weights. You can have regular or bold and black, or you can have regular or medium or bold. It depends on the kind of vibe that you're trying to create, but don't have too many weights, again, because it simply becomes too confusing. And one thing that you have to notice here is that this was my layer name, and I'll tell you why am I focusing so much on the layer name. This layers panel is extremely important when you're doing declaration. So you'd notice that for my UI text, I have the word UI followed by a slash followed by B1, which basically means body 1. So what happens is that when you use the slash convention, Figma automatically groups them. So this thing right here is simply because I have declared it in this way. And then this one is declared in this way. So what happens is that Figma would automatically couple them together under T1. So it becomes very easy for you to navigate all these different font sizes and font weights. So the thing is that when I go under T1, I can see all my different weights all together. So that is why you have different declarations. In this case, I have 4 different weights. I have regular, medium, semi-bold, and bold. Another thing you'd have to understand is that when you are doing these declarations, it is better to declare your weight in the text style name itself. So it just becomes easier during handoff. And there are many ways to do this, but in a lot of cases, developers often pick font weights So they don't write black, they would write something as 800. So if you go on fonts.google.com, you can actually check out your specific font and see what is the weight for bold, what is the weight for regular. And you would realize that, as I go from 100 to maybe 800, this is actually light and this is actually black. So this is my thickest font and this is my thinnest font. So the developer will not actually write light or black or semi-bold in code. She will actually simply write the font weight. So if you have your convention like this, you have your bucket name, you have your specific component, whether it's B1, B2, B3, B4, and then you have reg 400. And if I'm declaring the bold one, I would have bold 700. So when you declare your typefaces in this way, you eventually have a really well organized system where without even selecting the text style, just from the description, you can make out whether it's medium or bold, because it becomes slightly difficult to distinguish from this right here. If you don't have the 700 or 600 declared explicitly, it just leads to more complication. But when you have it absolutely clear, then even like mentally, you can make out that, oh, this is medium and this is regular, but it's difficult to distinguish between just the preview. So this is something that I would strongly recommend you to do that when you're doing your declarations. And now we have to understand the difference between your layer name, which is visible in the left side of your layers panel, as compared to the content text. So when you write in your text style, you can write anything you want. But when you do the declaration, your text style is the layer name. So I'll tell you, we'll open Figma right now and we'll explore this in real time. But the only issue is that if I've written this on my Figma canvas and this is my layer's name, when I go to styler or when I click on that plus icon to make a style, this becomes my text style name and not the text that I've written using that specific style. So this is very important, because now what we'll do is we'll shift to Figma now and we will use styler, sorter and batch renaming to quickly generate our text styles in the easiest way possible. So without wasting any further time, let's quickly get into Figma. Alright, so now we're inside our Figma file and I'm going to take you through the entire process of declaring your type style. So once you've decided your font size, your line height, you have a couple of titles, you have a couple of body text, how do you quickly declare them properly? So if you see these panels, I have some titles, I have around 7 titles, I have 5 body text, they begin from 12 pixel and they move to 16. After 16, as soon as I hit 18 pixels, that becomes my title 7. And the biggest title that I have is at 42 pixels, which is my UI title 1. I also have paragraph text. And if you notice, the line heights have been calculated accordingly. Like I have specified each and every line height. Whereas in some cases in body text, you would see that I have 17 and 14. It is recommended to just keep it at 100%. So that would make this 15. You would probably have as UI body as 16. So it's identical to the font size. Your line height is basically 100% of your font size. So it's on you. It depends on how you want to keep your system. Then you have labels, label 1, 2, and 3 from 12 font size up to 14 font size in 2 weights. Now, if you notice carefully, you would realize that I have some random text going on inside my body, but the layer name is different. So just for these titles, have put an example that even though I have mentioned the UI title 1, title 2, title 3, you have to make sure that your layer name is properly set, because when you declare styles, this text doesn't matter. Your layer name matters a lot. So how do I rename these things properly? I've put everything into an auto layout so that everything is in order. Auto layout forces you to keep things visually in alignment with the layer order as well. So if I select this auto layout, press enter, and you can keep a note at the bottom right corner for the keystrokes that I'm pressing. If I do Command R and say UI/T, which is T for title, followed by number ascending. So you would see how things are actually getting incremented automatically, but because it has added 2 n's, it would also add a 0. So if I get rid of 1 n, it would simply make it T1, T2, T3, and T4. So the ascending begins from 1, right? If I had done number descending, it would stop the descending at a specific number. So it starts from 7, goes till 1. But we want it to be in ascending order. So I'll get rid of 1n and simply do rename. So you'd realize that title 1 is actually looking title 7. Why is that? Because in our convention, we have made the biggest title as title 1. But for auto layout, if I take this out and if I keep this auto layout at horizontal instead of vertical, you'd realize that this title 1 comes at the first end. Like this is the first file on my left side. But in the layers panel, it seems at the very end. But Figma reads its files from the bottom. So it's a stack. So in the eyes of Figma, this is layer 1. And this is layer 2 for the auto layout. But when you rename, they rename from top to bottom. So you have to be careful about these things. So you can try and test it out. But the most important fact to understand here is that when we make an auto layout, Figma would order things from left and right. In the layers panel, it will go from bottom to top. But when you batch rename, the ascending order goes from top to bottom. So I'll get rid of these things. And you can simply take this title. You have UI slash T1, T2, T3. You have body 1, UI slash B1, B2 from batch renaming as well. I can simply do the same here. Select this auto layout, do command R and do paragraph /P $N. So I would have P7, P6 up to P1. Same you can do with label 1 as well. Now, this is where things get really interesting. All you have to do is select all these auto layouts, press enter, command / type generate styles. You should have the styler plugin installed. As soon as I do that, it would just quickly create 19 styles. Now, if I take any of these texts out, you would realize that it already has that text style. If I go here, if I click anywhere else, you realize that my UI has all my styles in place. My paragraph has all styles in place. Now, let's go to the second level of these things. We want to have different weights. All of these have, identical weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all these styles again. I want to have these things. Actually, you know what? Let's just do command Z. All right. Now we've come to where we started. All of these have regular weight. What I want to do is I want to have bold as well. So I'll select all of these, select bold, and now I have these two together. But I want to make sure that my layer name is updated. So my layer name would know that this is regular, this is bold. So if regular is say 400 in weight and bold is 700 in weight, and these are just random numbers that I'm saying, I want that to be appended to the layer's name. So again, I would select the auto layout, press enter, do command R. And instead of rename, I don't want to rename, I want to add something. So what I'll do is I'll click on current name. As soon as I do that, this means that whatever names that I have, please don't make any changes to that. I will add dash followed by reg, which stands for regular, dash 400, and simply do rename. So now you have reg 400 in front of every name. I'll select these as well, press enter, do command R, select current name, dash bold, dash 700, press rename. Now if I select all these auto layouts, press enter, and of course generate styles was the last thing that I clicked, so it is there as a recommendation. Now when I go into my UI, you realize that I have all my text styles properly in place. You have saved so much time by doing this. And it's your own way. You can figure out many different ways. You can have multiple slash conventions, do a lot of nesting, but I would recommend not to make it supremely complicated. But yeah, this was just a small demo as to how you can rename and quickly declare your text styles without spending too much time doing all these different things. And what you can do is you can basically tell whatever you want to here. So if you want, you can probably just for your developer say that this is regular, 400, so that it's easy to understand what you're saying. But now at least you know that your text style is called UI/T7-Reg400. So I hope this gave you quite a lot of clarity. There are 3 extremely cool plugins that I want to share you. One is find and replace. It is almost identical to the feature that we had on Word. So what you do is you open find and replace. Sometimes you write an incorrect word, or you have to switch a name across all screens. So if I say I want to change this word, right? Typography system. So I can say UI, and instead of that, I can simply make interface, and I will simply keep original case. So this is the preview. If I do replace all, it would simply replace it on every frame. So you can imagine the kind of time you would save, right? Like this is such a huge time saver. Then there is Ghost UX Writer. Sometimes when you're making prototypes or you're making error prompts, you need some copy, like good dummy copy. So this has been designed by Zeta, and this just allows you to quickly have good dummy text for your designs, for demos and prototypes. So they have multiple categories and you have to select which category do you want, and then they give you options for each of those categories. So it's a wonderful plugin. Takes a little time to load. I'm actually running quite a few things on my laptop, that's why. Skip for now. I don't need this. Yes, so you have payment errors, permission errors. If I go on input errors, you will see that there are categories. So it could be for username and password don't match. Once you click on that, you can either copy, or if you've selected a text layer and click on it, so it will add this text to your text layer. And then you have spell, which is basically spell check for Figma. I don't think you need a demo for this, but yes, these three plugins will really help you. And we would stop here because I don't want to overdo things. I think it's time for you to read more on typography and CSS, and make sure you revise everything that you're learning. Make sure that you're documenting everything that you learn in a Notion document, and start reading Medium articles on design. I have also written a few articles. I will put the link in the description. And finish your pending videos after this video, right? Because if you're coming here for the first time, you have to watch the previous episodes. And this next session is not for typography declarations. This is actually, I've used the same slide from the previous slide. But yes, just one quick reminder, if you want to learn complementary skills, if there are more things that you wish to learn, the premium sessions are now available on Graphy. We have interface design, we have Notion documentation, we have the art of learning fast and earning more, how to get a design job, social media posters using just Figma. There's also been a regular course that I've been running where I just discuss my notes from Notion. So there are 4 live sessions that happen at a very, very low price. And live interactions are also there. So everything can be checked out from anshmehra.graphy.com. And yes, I hope you learned something from this tutorial. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel, click on like, and make sure you comment your review, because when you do that, YouTube helps me recommend my work to other people as well. And if possible, put up a story on Instagram and tag me on anshmehra.work or on Twitter as well. And I will see you next week, because the Hindi episode is also going to come super soon. And now, after typography, we will explore spacing and layout. So that's the topic for the next video. I'm super excited about it because that is a very fundamental topic as to how do you understand your grids and layouts and spacing. So next video is going to be that. Hope you've been learning well. Hope you've been taking care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.
हेलो,
कैसा लग रहा है बैंगलोर?
नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रो। हर रोज मैं यहाँ कुछ ना कुछ नया सीख रहा हूँ।
हाँ, लोग कहते तो हैं लाइफ बहुत फास्ट है बैंगलोर की।
ब्रो यार, सब लोग कुछ ना कुछ बना रहे हैं, जिसको देखो कुछ ना कुछ नया सीख रहा है।
हाँ, तूने भी तो पिछले 1 साल में कितना कुछ सीख लिया है।
सही में, इतनी सारी छोटी छोटी बातें होती है जिनके बारे में कोई डिस्कस ही नहीं करता।
ब्रो, तुझे ना अपना एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करना चाहिए। आजकल तो ये पॉडकास्ट वगैरह का भी नया ट्रेंड शुरू हो गया है, तो तू लिखता भी है, तेरे पास सारी मेमोरीज भी पड़ी हुई हैं।
हाँ, वो तो है। मैं भी सोच रहा हूँ कि इन सब नोट्स को कंपाइल करके एक पॉडकास्ट शुरू करूँ।
हाँ, क्योंकि तू तो ये सब बातें भूल जाएगा, बट अगर तूने ये सारे लेसन्स एक पॉडकास्ट में डाल दिए तो वो हमेशा के लिए इंटरनेट पे रहेगा।
हाँ, वही। मैंने तो नाम भी सोच लिया है।
नाम? इतनी जल्दी?
हाँ।
क्या नाम है?
टेक इट इजी।
टेक इट इजी? क्यों?
क्योंकि ब्रो, ये जर्नी एक्चुअली में इतनी डिफिकल्ट नहीं है जितनी हमने इसे बना दिया है। मैक्सिमम लोगों को स्ट्रेस लेने की आदत पड़ जाती है। मुझे खुद पड़ गई थी।
हाँ, ये याद है मुझे, पर तू काफी चेंज हो गया 1 साल में।
और इतनी इंट्रोस्पेक्शन के बाद भी मुझे कभी ना कभी स्ट्रेस होता है, बट हाँ, आई एम डेफिनेटली वे अहेड फ्रॉम वेयर आई स्टार्टेड। कभी कभी आदमी को ज्ञान की नीड भी नहीं होती यार, बट अगर जर्नी के बीच में कोई आकर आपको थोड़ा रिलैक्स कर देना, तो वो भी बहुत हेल्प कर जाता है। समटाइम्स इट्स एक्चुअली इम्पोर्टेंट टू जस्ट टेक इट इजी।
एग्जैक्टली ब्रो, तूने मेरी लाइफ में वो सेम पार्ट प्ले किया है, तो वो एक सीनियर चाहिए होता है। यू नीड दैट पर्सन हु हैज गॉन थ्रू द पाथ्स दैट यू आर गोइंग थ्रू, एंड दैट एडवाइस इज नीडेड। एंड तू कर शुरू ब्रो, टेक इट इजी। नाम भी बढ़िया है, कंटेंट भी बढ़िया होगा।
लेट्स सी, आज बैठता हूँ रिकॉर्ड करने। चल, डिनर का टाइम हो गया है, बाद में मिलाता हूँ।
हाँ, ओके, बाय।